Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you, and today I am bringing you an interview with John Bush of Armored Saint. So I don't want to talk too much before the interview, but really quick, I'm going to be bringing interviews and migrating them over from the podcast onto YouTube. I also plan on bringing over interviews and converting old interviews from, say, the last 20 to 25 years and putting them on the channel. Now, obviously, almost all of these will be in audio format only, but at the same time, you guys can listen to them. And some of these interviews being, years and years old, it gives you a little bit of a retrospect back into that specific time period for that specific band or band member. So it's something I am going to be working on and bringing to the channel. Now, John Bush and I talk about a lot of really cool stuff, and one of the things that I really wish would have happened would be a tour with Anthrax, which was talked about. It never happened, but him and Joey Belladonna sharing the singing duties, much like the guys in Halloween, Michael Kiske and Andy Darris, are doing now. And that was talked about all the way back in 2000, and it just never materialized. So we did talk a little bit about that in this interview. We talked a lot about the Symbol of Salvation album and a great look back on that album, because at the time when this interview took place, they were promoting the Symbol of Salvation live album, which I totally suggest you all go and pick up. And that's what we talk about. We talk about a lot of cool stuff from that era, though. So check it out. It's an audio format only. And leave a comment. I'm curious as to what you think about what John had to say. And give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you see on this video. And don't forget to hit that little bell to be notified of any time I post a video. So with that said, here is the interview with myself and John Bush of Armored Saint from January of 2022.
Hey, John, it's great to have you on the show, and really cool to see an Armored Saint live album for Symbol of Salvation. I was really, really excited to see you guys do the entire album in a show and actually release it as a live record. And what took you so long to do that? Because to me, I would have thought you possibly would have done something like this a long time ago.
Well, sometimes it takes us a long time to do anything. So let's just start with that. So this situation isn't behaving to sometimes the way Armored Saint works, which is a little slow at times. But in the end, we got it done, and it was a great project that we had, and a lot of fun to do it. And we really kind of discovered how great the record is by playing those songs in its entirety every night. It was really a lot of fun, and even to me, it reiterated how much it's a great album. It was actually, I think, Tracy's idea, Joey's wife, the president of Metal Blade, who suggested we do something like that in conjunction with the record being 30 years. At that time, it was going to be 30 years old. So it sounded like a great idea. We had did some touring for When Hands Down, which came out in 15, and so the idea was to go back out and give another reason to go out and tour, and that was the idea, to go out and do Symbol. And the idea was to get it out in 21, which we were able to accomplish, which is really cool. We did all the recording and the video footage probably in 19, but it took some time to edit it and kind of do it in conjunction with trying to get the last studio record that we put out, Punching the Sky, out in 20. So we kind of always knew it was going to come out later or after Punching the Sky, but luckily enough, we were able to get it out in 21, because then it is 30 years later, which is really cool. So it was, like I said, a lot of fun. Just brought back a lot of memories. It reminded us how amazing Dave was and what a great writer he was, and then it's just a lot of great songs. It probably has bigger life now than it ever did, especially even when it came out.
Well, let's go back to the time when the album did come out, because at that time, you just brought Dave up. At that time, Dave had just passed away, and You guys ended up coming out with an album in Symbol of Salvation that I consider one of the most incredible albums I've ever heard, and has some of the most incredible songs I've ever heard. And what was the mentality of the band back then going in to record this record, just having faced the tragedy with David Pritchard passing away?
That's funny. I was actually talking about this yesterday to somebody, and the thing is that by the time we were actually getting ready to make the record and put it out, it was a kind of a happier time actually, because we knew at that point that that Symbol Salvation and this record that we were about ready to embark on was going to be, this kind of special thing. And, for us to look back on that time, like I said, we look back on this record and we know that it was a really cool record in conjunction with the time of that it was coming out. It's still, like I said, I don't think it really gets the notoriety that it deserves because like I said, it's become a cooler and bigger thing later as time has gone on. And to me, it's still really, really cool that that's the scenario with the record. So, we do miss Dave. We're always going to miss Dave. I wish he was here to participate in the making of the record. He only was able to really play on the one song, which was Tainted Cast, and we made that happen, which is pretty remarkable that we were able to do that. We pulled the lead from the original demo of that song, and we're able to put it on the recording of the record, which is pretty remarkable, like I said. But like I said, it reminded us all the special circumstances surrounding Dave and being a part of not only the writing of that record, but the recording of it. So,
when you talk about not receiving the recognition you deserve, say for a record, for example, I go back and look at Armored Saint as a band, and you look back at the fact that, you guys really didn't get the recognition, in my opinion, that you have deserved. You have so many big musicians too out there, from Metallica to all these really awesome metal bands that always talk about how great you guys were. But it almost felt like in the scene that you came out of in LA, you were either a thrash band or a glam band, and Armored Saint kind of fell somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I've talked about this lately, and it's probably one of the reasons that we kind of struggled in our career because we didn't really get a chance to capitalize on both those trends that were happening. And I say trends, I don't mean it in a negative way, especially almost like the thrash metal fans being like trendy, but in a weird way, it still was, even though you don't think of thrash metal being a trendy thing, and I mean this in the most inspiring of ways, but there was some aspects of it that were trendy, and the bands that were leading that charge really were able to benefit from that. And then, of course, certainly the hair metal band was the trendy thing as well, and a lot of those bands that came out of that era, they really benefited from that, and some that probably were really lucky to benefit from it. I mean, certainly the Motleys, Poison, those bands were huge, but you had all the other smaller bands that were able to benefit somewhat on the trend that was. And here was Saint, we kind of didn't really, we fit in with both. Like, we could play with Metallica and Death Angel, and we could play with, we never actually did play with Anthrax, which is kind of funny. But we could do it. We could hold our own with these groups for sure, because we had powerful, heavy, thrashy type songs with like Madhouse, March of the Saint. And then we could actually play with a lot of the hair metal bands, because we did in the 80s growing up through the club scene with playing the Troubadour and the country club with bands like Rad and Wasp and Black and Blue. So, and we certainly connected with those fans as well. But we didn't really, like I said, once those things really kind of exploded, we weren't really part of it. And I always kind of laugh and make the joke that we had our kind of inferiority complex because we didn't really fit easily into either one of those categories. And probably, it probably affected the band in making decisions sometimes. And what do we do? Like, what do we do with the situation? How do we continue onward here on this particular record? And it didn't come till really simple when we finally realized, let's just really concentrate on our own uniqueness and our own sound and not really be too concerned about it, about fitting in. I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like we were like, we want to fit in. We didn't really care, but it would have been nice to get the record sales based on the popularity of those two genres, and we just didn't. But in the end, I think that it kind of helped us create our own unique identity, which I think we've really mastered at this point with something like Punching the Sky, the last record we made. So.
One thing that sticks out to me is the fact that the last two albums, Punching the Sky and Win Hands Down, to me, they stick out because I think they are just as good as anything you've ever done, even Symbol of Salvation. I mean, 30 years after Symbol of Salvation comes out, you guys are still putting out really high quality albums. And for me as a music fan, that sticks out to me.
Well, I appreciate that, and I believe it. I agree with you. Win Hands Down was a great record, and I think Punching the Sky just really kind of embellishes on that. And it's really about just being super comfortable with our style, wanting to sound like this, powerful bluesy hard rock heavy metal band, and being always giving props to where we came from in the 80s, but also wanting to sound like a band that's putting out records in 2015 and 2020. We want it to sound current. We don't want to sound like a band that's trying to sound like we're replicating March of the Saint or even Symbol of Salvation, because as much as I love those records, we already did that. So we want to keep growing and expanding on our songwriting and our style and trying to make music that just sounds current but true to the roots. And it's not easy to do. It really isn't. And a lot of bands struggle with that because they want to. Sometimes fans become repetitive in doing what they do because they think that's what the fans want, and you still have to push yourself. You can't just go, let's just rest on our laurels and make a record that sounds like what people expect from us. I always want to challenge our fan base. I want to say, we're going to write this song, or we have written this song, and we believe that you are going to love it, even though it's maybe a little outside the box. And I think by pushing ourselves, it's pushing the fans, and it's making everybody grow together. Not to get too, deep about this, but that's how I believe, and that's what I really think that we can do. And incorporating different instruments and different structures of songs, and not just writing, verse, chorus, B section, verse, chorus, solo, tag, out, changing arrangements, pushing it. Those are the kind of things that I think just make us a better band. And so that's why I think those last records are awesome, and they fit perfectly in our discography.
Now that I think about it, I can include La Raza in that too, because I really love that record as well.
Well, that's nice. La Raza's a little. La Raza came out in 10, and it was a little different for what we were doing maybe 10 years before with Revelation. So I think the thing about La Raza, it was a little experimental, and which is cool, which is great, and it kind of. I always say that the previous record sets up the next record. Yeah. So it's like the volleyball, three hits. The first person hits it, the second person hits it, and then the third person comes and spikes it. And I kind of feel like that's the case with the previous records. Like, you want the previous record to set up the next record. I don't know. That's my weird sports metaphor. I use a lot of sports metaphors because I love sports, and so I think there's a lot of connections to sports and music and role players and the importance of that. And sure. I don't know. I can go off on a huge tangent, and I'll just lose all your listeners. So I won't do that.
You don't have to worry about doing that. But I want to talk about something else now. So after Symbol of Salvation, you went and joined Anthrax after that. who came out with Sound of White Noise. You were in that band for that record. And it's interesting because Dave Jordan actually produced Symbol Salvation and also produced the Sound of White Noise. And to me, I thought that you were the perfect guy to sing in Anthrax throughout the 90s. They had already started going down a darker musical path with Persistence of Time. And so then the 90s come around and they bring you into the band, which I think you were a perfect transition because they were one of the few bands that really transitioned really well into the 90s, in my opinion. And so then obviously Dave Jordan was brought in for that record. Did you have any influence on him being brought in for Sound of White Noise and doing the recording of that album?
Well, I didn't really have any influence on using Dave. I think that was just an idea that they had and maybe the label had. Of course, I supported it wholeheartedly because I loved working with Dave. And Brian Carlstrom, who unfortunately passed away a few years back, who's the engineer, and Annette, who was also one of the engineers on both those, she engineered on both those albums as well. And it was just a great experience doing Symbol with Dave as being at El Dorado Studios. So to go back in there, I was all for it because I love the experience, like I said, of working with Dave. And, you know, I think Dave did a great job of Sound of White Noise, and he did a great job of Symbol Salvation. So it was a win-win scenario for me personally. And it's so funny because my wife and I, we have a casting studio, and we just moved locations after 13 years, and now we're almost like directly across the street from where El Dorado is, which is, or was, should I say. El Dorado's now moved into Burbank, but and it wasn't. This is in Hollywood, right on Sunset. But it was just funny to be in that area because it's like I spent so much time working on those records. And it's another side note. A buddy of mine who's an actor, I guess, just did something with Gene Simmons on some commercial, and he sent me a picture of him and Gene. So I sent him back the version that I did with Anthrax of the song "Love Her All I Can," which was the Kiss cover, of course. Yeah. And Gene and Paul sang on that, and we did it at El Dorado. So again, all this, you know, is one big kind of incestuous world almost. It's pretty funny, but. You know, the thing about Anthrax and the 90s is that I think Anthrax was embracing being in this new decade. And you know, we love the 80s, and everybody, like, we're all nostalgic for the 80s. You know, that's where I started. That's where I cut my teeth and learned my chops, and I love it, you know. But the 90s were cool, too. And the 90s ushered in this whole new decade. And the bands that were coming in the 90s were incredible. The Soundgardens and Alice in Chains and you know, many Stone Temple Pilots, whatever. You know, there were some great bands, and so we were stoked about that. And you had to keep up with it, and it was not easy for a lot of bands in the 80s to make that transition. There's no denying it. As a matter of fact, the 90s probably it killed a lot of bands. That's the way it was. But for Anthrax, I think everybody was excited about this new decade, and the music started sounding like it was rolling with that. I'm not saying that we were listening to those bands and going, okay, let's emulate their sound. I don't believe that at all. I just think that we were ready to roll with this new decade and this new vibe that was going on, and that's why Sound of White Noise sounded like it did. So it was a good thing. It was a great thing, actually.
Yeah, and when you look at Anthrax, they've always been pretty open-minded. They've never really been afraid to do something different. You know, you can go back to the Bring the Noise stuff that they did, and there's songs on albums that, you know, most thrash bands wouldn't probably even come up with. But Anthrax has always been open-minded and has transitioned well into other genres of music, in my opinion.
Well, Anthrax was never, and this goes back to even me being in the band, before I was in the band. They always took chances about doing things and sticking their neck out and, you know, listen, I'm the man, and Bring the Noise, and, you know, whatever, starting up a posse to go. You could even bring in stuff like Cup of Joe that I did with, you know, and Close to the Extras. All these things were chance taking. It wasn't just like, this is a sure shot, everyone's going to follow along with this I'm the man idea. They did it, and they were willing to stick their neck out, and it worked. Not everything worked, but the willingness to take that chance of saying, let's do this, I always thought is incredible, and I give my hats off to those guys. artists for always willing to say, let's do this. It's not, we feel like it's in the wheelhouse, but it's not what everybody's going to expect from us. And I love that. And that's my favorite artists and musicians are ones that are willing to take a chance and like I said, kind of challenge the fan base. Say, hey, what do you think of this? And this is not what you might expect, and let's do it anyways. And Anthrax did that. And like I said, when I was in the band, and before I was in the band, and now even after I was in the band, and it was certainly way, certain things were ahead of its time. Let's face it, Bring the Noise, was amazing. And that song, every time we performed it live while I was in the group, was just off the charts. I mean, we toured with Pantera in 97, end of 96, no, I'm getting a little hazy on my dates. So end of 97, beginning 98, we did 2 runs with them, and they were amazing shows. It was a Great Southern Tranquil record, and it was kind of the end of Stomp, so before we put out Volume 8. But the point is that every time that we played Bring the Noise live, that might have been the highlight of the whole show. The crowd went so bananas during that. And, I always have like great memories of playing that song live and like I said, being part of that. And, that was them sticking their neck out and taking the risk. And I love that.
Well, Armored Saint was more of a traditional metal band than, say, Anthrax. Anthrax was a thrash band. And was there any kind of what was the transition like for you as a singer to go from singing the stuff that Armored Saint was doing to singing thrash metal, which is what Anthrax was doing? Was it pretty challenging to do that? Or did it just come naturally and it wasn't really that big of an issue?
For one, I tried to sing the songs as best I could to the way they originally were sung. We all know that me and Joey have a pretty different sounding voice for one another, but I know that fans still want to hear, when I was in the group, when they want to hear the songs sung as they were on the records. So like I said, it's going to sound different just because our voices sound different. That being said, I try to keep them true to the original style of the song. His voice is a little higher, so it was a little challenging, but I did my best. I know how I felt when I hear singers that replace previous people, and I thought that was really important to stay true to the original style, and that was my goal. So singing thrashier songs, I could do it. I could pull it off.
From a live perspective, I always thought your version of "I Am the Law" sounded pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. I love singing those songs, and once I took them and started singing them, then I took them. They were like my adopted children. That's how I looked at them. So I gave them all the love and nurturing that I could, and tried to raise them correctly.
Speaking of singing songs live that you didn't originally sing on, I really thought that you did a great job singing the Four Horsemen with Metallica when you went to their 30th anniversary show and did that song on stage. I thought that actually sounded really good. And what was it like singing that on stage with those guys?
That was an awesome moment. That was a special time. Not only did I do that, but Armored Saint actually opened that show of the 4 that they played that particular, for the 30th anniversary, which is really awesome. So we got to go up there and play like a 30-minute set opening the one show, which is great. And then I came out and did the Four Horsemen and kind of placated or played on the idea that this is what it would have sounded like if I joined the band. That little joke kind of thing that I have to talk about all the time, which is fine. And I'm always flattered. I'm always flattered and grateful, of course. It was awesome. I went up there and I knew it was like, man, pressure's on, so you better kill it. And I thought I did a great job, and the energy was incredible, and it was a lot of fun. It was just a great night, to be up there and hanging around backstage with King Diamond and Kid Rock and Lou Reed, and it was just wild. And then there was a bunch of people in the crowd, like guys from Green Day and all kinds of people. So it was it was fun. It was a great memory. I know they're doing the 40th. I think this week, his buddy of mine told me he's going to the show, so we'll see what they do for that. He goes, did they ask you? And I was like, no, they didn't ask me. And and let's leave the 30th as a great memory. Sure. I don't need to go back for the 40th. So,
oh no,
it would be hard to beat that one because it was so great.
Yeah, and I think about your singing voice. And you go and listen to Armored Saint, you listen to Anthrax. I'm listening to that Metallica song that you did, the Four Horsemen that you did with them. And your voice really transitions well into so many different types of music. And your voice always, to me, no matter what decade you were performing in or recording in or whatnot, you've always transitioned really well. And so when you go back to talking about coming up with new ideas on some of the later albums, is it difficult for you to come up with that new ideas and new stuff, or is it pretty easy for you even after doing this, for almost 40 years?
Luckily for writing lyrics, I've been pretty good with that. I haven't had too many blocks. I feel like I really expanded on my lyrics, and I really cherish writing lyrics, and I take it very seriously. I don't take every song lyrically serious. I've written some stuff that I think has a sense of humor, but I do take the idea of writing lyrics very seriously, and I love doing it. It's so fun, and luckily, like I said, I still feel like I have a pretty good ability for it. When it comes to singing, what I've been doing lately, I'd say probably since the pandemic kicked in, was I don't want to burn out on singing to my own music, because there's no reason for me to continue to rehearse Can You Deliver. If I can't walk on stage and do that literally like I'm comatose state and still pull it off, then something's wrong, because I've been doing it for so long. So I even Punch in the Sky, when it came out, I was excited about playing it, but I didn't want to burn out on it because I didn't know when we were going to play. So I kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit to at least sing to. We did the one live stream, which was fun, but then after that we just didn't know when we were going to perform. So instead of singing those songs, I went back through my whole record collection. I have everything in my iPod, actually, which is at this point would be considered to be quite outdated, but I love my iPod. And so I'll just go through it, and I'll just pick an artist and say, okay, what I actually did is did it alphabetically. It started with AC/DC, and I went all the way to ZZ Top, and and that's what I've done. So I sing the AC/DC catalog. Other songs I know, of course, I don't know every song, but I certainly the Bon Scott era and some of the Brian era I know, and then I'll just go to lyrics AZ. There's a website that I think is pretty accurate, but I see things that are a little bit inaccurate, and then I'll just pull up the lyrics and I'll sing along to these artists. So, and that was helping me keep my voice in shape. It was helping me probably sing to a lot of the people that have influenced me, and just hopefully, I thought I was just embellishing my style a little bit. So that's what I've been doing lately, and it's just, like I said, to keep my chops up, nothing else, and to keep singing, because singing is just like any other muscle. It's like if you want to be a runner, or if you do marathons, or if you're work out, you need to stretch and you need to work those muscles out. And singing is the same way. So I feel like I'm a better singer when I'm singing a lot and consistently. It was funny. I had a conversation with Sebastian Bach a couple years ago at a concert, and we were talking about that. He's like, dude, I gotta just keep singing. When I stop singing is when I lose it. I was like, I completely agree. So I think that's the most important thing. And I think my style, it took a while to figure it out, I think, in the 80s, but I finally did, and my voice is deeper, and because your voice just gets deeper as you age anyway, even if you were just talking. But I do think, I think that most importantly is just kind of honing in on that sweet spot. It's kind of like my mid-range area, and pushing it a little bit when I can sing as high as I can. Sometimes it's a struggle. Mostly I sometimes struggle more when I'm singing in super lows, because my voice is so raspy that sometimes it's hard to stay clean when I'm singing really low. But it's just fun. It's fun to sing. I still love doing that. I get challenged with pitch sometimes. And when I was working with Joey and he's recording my vocals for Punching the Sky, he doesn't mess around, man. He makes me do things over, not to beat it to death, but enough to make sure that it sounds the best it could. And sometimes I struggle with pitch, probably like a lot of singers do. And
sure.
And I think that's the thing that he just was trying to beat out of me. And I'd be like, "Oh, it sounds great." And he's like, "Hey, you could do it better." I was like, "What? This sounds good." And he goes, "You could do it better." Damn you. All right, let's go.
Well, I've been in that situation before, but I could say it's great to have somebody there to really push you so you can get that perfect take on a record.
Right. And, he cared enough to do it. Max Norman was pretty tough in the studio for all of us during the Delirious Nomad record. He made us do many, many takes. I remember a lot of, basic rhythm tracks. We did, 25 takes. So, man, what sounds different on this one than the last one? We're done with, Nervous Man. Let's move on here.
Yeah.
But, maybe he was just meticulous. That's what he did. So, me and Joey, we just have this really awesome bond as writers, as in the recording studio. It's great. I mean, it really is special, the relationship that we have musically together. We don't always agree on other things, direction of the band per se, or particular decisions about what to do in regards to a tour or marketing. But when it comes to music, we rarely disagree, which is pretty cool. So I think that's why we've had such success on the last couple of records, because we've done the bulk of the writing. Certainly other guys have contributed ideas for sure, and we welcome that. But me and Joey have this really cool bond after all these years, and I really cherish that.
Hypothetical situation: if you were at a metal festival and Anthrax was playing the same festival and they wanted you to come on stage and sing with them, maybe even sing with Joey, would you do it?
Of course, yeah, sure. I'd be flattered. I've said this numerous times that I always really kind of put in Joey's court, because he's the singer and he's the guy who's there, and he's the guy who should be there, because it's right, it's correct, I would want him to feel okay with it, and if he did, then yeah, it'd be fun. We actually did a show, but we didn't play the same day. It was the Barcelona Metal Fest a few years back in Barcelona, of course, and it was great because it was Farmer Saint's first time being in Spain and playing in Spain, which is awesome. Spain is, arguably one of the best audiences in the world, I feel. But we didn't play on the same day, so unfortunately, we didn't make our paths didn't cross. But yeah, it'd be fun as long as Joey Belladonna was cool with it. I think that's the most important.
Yeah, I know you guys sang on a track together way back when in a compilation, you and Joey Belladonna, but I always thought that on stage you guys would just really sound great together because you have such contrasting voices. And to be honest, it works really well, because I've seen it happen with Halloween doing it on stage, and I could totally see you guys doing well at that if it ever happened.
Yeah, a lot of people have brought up the Halloween thing, and it's really amazing that those guys were able to do that, and I'm sure the fan base is extremely stoked, and they were able to just juggle the egos. I'm not saying that they have big egos. We did a tour with Halloween back in 1987 with Armored Saint and Grim Reaper. It was a great tours, the Hell on Wheels. It was awesome, and those guys were great. They were actually doing really well then, and they were able to stay the test of time, and kudos to them for doing that. And they have this thing where they brought their multiple singers and make it work. Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really helps out too is that they don't sweat a lot of the small stuff. They don't get upset over little stuff. As you get older, you just get to that point where you just don't give a fuck, and you don't allow a lot of things to upset you or piss you off. And I think, Andy Darris, who is one of the singers in the band, who's been in the band obviously a very, very long time. That's one of the things he pointed to. And Michael Whiteketh, he also pointed to the same thing, saying, hey, you know what? It's just no point in getting mad over little stuff.
Right. Well, then that's the best attitude to have. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's crazy when you hear about rock and roll egos at this point. It's like, really? Like, I get it in your 20s, when you're young and everyone's pissing their territory and their bravado, and everyone's. I mean, Armored Saint struggle with that, and we still struggle with that, and it's kind of. Sometimes it's just too many chefs in the kitchen, and I try to embellish the roles that everybody has. They may not be the equal roles, but everyone has an important role. I always say that one of the beauties of Saint is that it's the same guys, other than Dave, obviously. It's the same guys, which is not too many bands can say that. It was really cool, and I really love that. That being said, everybody's role is going to be a little different. Going back to the sports thing, I use the connection of like the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. Like, I'm not saying I'm Michael Jordan by any means, but like, you had Jordan, then you had Pippen, and you had Paxton, and you had Horace Grant, and then you had Rodman, and all these guys were important into making the team, win championships, and they won 6 of them, and Jordan was obviously the centerpiece of it all, but those other guys were really important as well, and the roles that they fit into, and John Paxton hit huge shots to win games that won championships, and so did Steve Kerr, and Rodman getting rebounds. So it wasn't only Jordan, going off the charts with his antics. He was amazing. Let's face it, best player ever, maybe. But you know what I mean. So I think that's really important in bands, and so like I said, not to get off on this tangent here, but I think it's important to be able to just go, this is where it's at, and to hear that about Halloween, that's extremely refreshing, because if you're all there, you're all there. But that's awesome. So that's the best part of it, and let's face it, what breaks bands up is usually those roles being undefined, and that's what my personal opinion is. And when those become undefined, it's usually when bands struggle and they can't agree on things, and so that's why it's really important for those things to be defined, and then everyone can say that we all matter. And that's the thing. Songwriting is probably one of the key components to bands breaking up too, and it can be touchy, getting in the writing mode, and I struggle with it in the Saint world, and I struggle with it in the Anthrax world too, and it becomes a delicate time when it comes to all that stuff. But the end result hopefully makes everyone happy and go, that's an awesome record, and that's the most important thing.
Well, it's like anything, any kind of relationship that you ever have. If you don't talk things out, bad things will happen. So you have to be upfront, and you have to be able to talk things out with the people in your band as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always roses. I'm not gonna lie. And how could it be? We've been band for off and on for 30 or 40 years. We've known each other for over 50 years, the core of us, which is crazy. So let's face it. I mean, if somebody was married 50 years, they're going to try to convince you that's all bliss. That's just going to be baloney. But you find a way to make it work. And when it doesn't, and if it comes to a point when it's like, I'm not happy, then that's when it should end. I mean, let's face it. There's countless bands, they will remain nameless by me today, that should have broken up years ago, because like, come on, like, how much do you want to drag this through the mud, man? We all see it, we all know it, and it sucks. and how much do you need to have that band play again or see that band make a record and know that deep down those guys hate one another? That to me is crap. I hate that. Yeah. So like I always say that a relationship has a termination or an expiration date. That's why I say that to myself. I didn't coin this phrase, but I believe that. And I'm hoping that the expiration date between me and my wife is when I die. Not any sooner than that, because I love her to death and I want our marriage to last until I'm dead in the ground. I'm 7 years older, and hopefully I die first, but and most likely will. But the thing is that then the same goes for a band. And if there's unhappiness, then there's no point in doing it. Again, of course there is the one reason that bands do it, and we all know what that reason is, and that is for the money, and that's the main reason. But the thing about saying, and I'm going to be blunt here, we don't make that much money, so it's not like we're walking around, going, oh, we're going to do this tour and pocket, 400, 500 grand each. It's just not happening that way. So there's no reason to think that way. So I don't know. That's my own perspective on that. There you go.
And again, referring back to the Halloween thing that we talked about a little bit earlier, again, those guys just have a lot of fun on stage together and just genuinely just like to be around each other. And it's a really cool thing to see.
That's cool to know. That's great to hear. I mean, Michael Kiske, he was a great singer, and we hung out a little bit. Like I said, we toured together. We did that tour. It's called The Hell on Wheels. If you could look it up, you could do a little research if you want. And that was in 1987 when Raising Fear came out. So it was Raising Fear and The Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2, I believe. And I can't remember what Grim Reaper record was.
Probably See You in Hell.
Because it wasn't, I don't think it was See You in Hell.
No.
I think it was a follow-up. Yeah.
It was one of them.
They had a song called Rock You to Hell.
Rock You to Hell. That's what it was.
Do they have a record called Rock You to Hell?
Yeah, that's what it is. I always get them confused.
It's so funny. But that was a great tour. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. MTV actually was behind that tour, so it did really well. I remember, you can go to the classic MTV. We did a show on MTV where we all three played, and then they played like a snippet of 4 or 5 songs from each band, and it was really cool. It was great, and it was from the theater in Minneapolis. It was called it's where where Purple Rain was filmed. I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden now. What the name of that venue is? Fifth Avenue. Second. I think it's Fifth Avenue. And it's a great venue, and it was an awesome show, and it was a great tour. It was a lot of fun, and really strong memories of it. And those guys were kicking butt at that point. They were managed by Rod Smallwood, who was Maiden's manager. So he was doing great things with them, and he really set them up. And like I said, we had a lot of fun on that tour, and kudos to those guys for making this, singer thing work. I think it's really cool.
It's unfortunate because I would love to see more bands do something similar to what Halloween's doing. And, unfortunately, you really don't see it that often.
It rarely does happen. It rarely happens when you have 2 guitar players or, a guitar player coming back.
Sure.
It's hard to make those things work again. Usually, like I said, the reason a lot of those things happen is because people see the amount of money they could possibly make and go, okay, let's do this. But the bigger the band that you are, the easier it is, because the Eagles did hate each other. I don't know if they still do, but they did, and that was one of the reasons they didn't do it. But they were such a big band that they could travel separately, they could have separate dressing rooms. They literally didn't need to see one another until they went on stage, and for 2.5 hours, and then afterwards, see ya. So but they could do that. Armor's saying, well, we can't do that. We're gonna have to still travel in the same bus. We're gonna probably only have one dressing room, so we better like each other, and if we don't, we're gonna be in close quarters, so it'll be difficult.
Well, John, my last question for you is, any last words to say to the fans that will be checking out this interview?
Well, I'm always grateful for all the fans that supported me in my career, whether they're huge fans of Stain or fans of Anthrax or fans of both, or, discovered me through Metal Allegiance or who knows what, I'm always excited, I've said this a million times, but it's not like I've ever made billions of dollars. Well, I never made millions of dollars, let's be blunt. But so for me, it's always been to some degree a labor of love, and it has to be when you're not making a boatload of money. And it's funny because I used to use the term it's the ultimate. The word escapes me right now. Sorry, I'm losing it now. It's showing my 58 years. But again, back to the fact that it should be a hobby. That's the word. Hello. I said that word hobby, and people even in guys in my band were like, "God, that sounds terrible. A hobby. You make model airplanes for a hobby," and I'm like, but that's not what I mean. I mean, this is not big job that is earning tons of money. So you do it for the love of it, and to me, I think that's what I meant by that. And again, it should be for the love, because that's the primary source. This is the passion that we have, is making music. It should be the primary reason that you do it is for the love of it. Sure. And if you can make a living with it, great. And if you can supplement a living with it, great. But I'm always proud of everything I've done. Some songs better than others, some records better than others. But I'm proud of everything I've done, because I've been able to do it for so long, and the longevity, I think, is really the coolest aspect of it. If I make a record and not one person purchases it, no matter how good I think it is, it's a failure. So you gotta sell something. Let's face it. But I don't try to judge things based on the amount of record sales that it's sold, because I don't think that's completely fair, especially when we're talking about art. Whether it's music, movies, paintings, whatever. I don't say, what did that sell? Okay, it's got to be great. I don't believe that at all. Most of the time, it probably isn't great. But the truth is, you want the quality there, but you still want the people to dig it, and the people digging it is the key component, of course. So, the fans, they're everything. Let's face it.
Well, John, I thank you for the time. Thank you for doing the interview. And, you've been inspiring me with the music that you've helped create for 30 years now. And I'm really glad you're still around creating it. So just again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
That's great. Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate that. And, hopefully, it gets you through the tough times. And there's been some tough times. So, yeah, that's what it's all about.